Hello and welcome to Jockeys, the podcast. I'm Adam McNamara, and this is the racing podcast where we strip away the guarded versions of jockeys that you see every day on TV, giving them the platform to tell us what they really think. We talk about their regrets and aspirations, and we have a couple of laughs along the way as well.
On this episode, Richard Kingscote.
You can hurt yourself doing anything in life.
Exactly.
So you may as well do what you enjoy. Because sometimes you'd be in that state and then you'd sort of snap out of it halfway around and you think, I'm pushing my luck a little bit here. I'm often quite mindful that I can't afford to smash it up because if I break a collarbone in June, it's just stupid. I think the trust had gone. I probably was riding a few not very well, particularly I'd say halfway through my playing. Chris Catlin and Drowney and Fergus Sweeney, we always play, and they'd come back the next morning and they say, "You still on?" I was like, yeah, still on. And the next day I'd still be on like all night. It was absolutely stupid.
Richard, welcome to Jockeys, the podcast. It's really good to get you on. I just said to you I'm quite bad at intros, but I found this one quite easy because I know what I want to talk to you about first thing off the bat. Real simple one is motorbikes. Because generally when I speak to you at the races, anytime I see you, the subject of motorbikes comes up. And I've just got my first bike about a week ago. I've been any excuse to get out in it and absolutely love it. But obviously from your point of view, you tend to stick more to the racetrack, as it were. So can you tell me first, why is it that you're generally sticking to just the track rather than the average English roads? And what is it that you get out of being on a bike?
So I started riding on the roads. I had a little road bike when I was in Lambourne. We moved up to Chester and upgraded my bike to the Yamaha R6, which I've actually still got, might be getting sold Sunday. So I've owned it since new. So it's a bit, I'm a little bit touchy about getting rid of it. But basically Alton Park is not far from where I used to live in Chester. So I found out they do track days there. And ever since I'd done a track day, the road just wasn't the same. Because you can't go fast, you can't push your limits, you can't, be trying to get your knee down everywhere. I'm not really one, I spend that much time on the road, I'm not really one that would want to go just for a jolly for the day. So the track really suited me. And you can keep improving, even like, I'm still rubbish, but each time I can find something new to improve on, or my mates will give me something, or you can get instruction on the track. It's just a safer environment to go stupid fast. So it's something I enjoy. And when you're on a bike, you have to only think about that moment. There's no thinking about what you're doing tomorrow or what horses you're riding or I've done that wrong. It's just, you've just got to free your mind up and concentrate on that one thing at that time. So
I heard someone explain it the other day on like a TikTok of it's like the closest thing you get to being in like a flow state without say competing. Like, footballers and athletes talk about they get in a game, they get in the flow state. Like you said, you're not thinking about anything else, like what you're having for dinner, what happened yesterday. It's just you're locked in. And is it a combination of that and adrenaline that keeps you wanting to go back to the track?
Yeah, probably. Like everyone thinks I'm a speed freak, but I'm not. I actually, I don't know. It does worry me sometimes. Because sometimes you'd be in that state and then you'd sort of snap out of it halfway around and you think, I'm pushing my luck a little bit here. I'm often quite mindful that I can't afford to smash it up because if I break a collarbone in June, it's just stupid.
Is there a day or like a track day or a race that stands out in your mind where you felt like you were most at your limit, where you pushed it maybe further than you had before?
So my first race, I definitely pushed things past my comfort zone, just because you sort of have to. And everyone says once you're racing, you always take time off what you would usually do. But I guess there was a time in Spain where, on a tricky track, which I actually, once it clicked, I quite enjoyed. So yeah, I mean, most of the time I like it. But yeah, there's a track called Andalusia. It's quite technical, but once it all comes together, it's actually quite a cool track. And because I've been there a few times now, I quite enjoy that trip.
I feel like you're being a little bit modest, just because obviously I've just kind of started on my motorbike journey and I'm very much a novice. And obviously I've not been on a track or anything yet, but I have seen clips of you on track, and it doesn't strike me that you're a novice by any means. And it looks to me, obviously from a kind of a novice perspective, it looks to me like you're pushing and you're hitting limits. So I feel like maybe you're being a little bit modest.
I'm not slow. I can hold I can hold my own in the fast group. But once I went racing, my best finish was fifth, I think. Albeit I started in 12th because I didn't have a test day. I just rocked up race morning and qualified 12th. And then, like, I'm smooth, I ride reasonably safe, and I have an awful lot of improvement to do. And when I stop race riding, as long as I finish in one piece, then I will be putting a good bit of effort into my motorbike racing. I race with some mates who are naturally very fast, and I'm gonna have to catch up a little bit, but I've got hopefully time to do that.
I just want to, just for the viewer's sake, because I've got a video of you, I think, is it helmet cam or GoPro or something,
It's just on
Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we can again, I think to the untrained eye, for someone who maybe doesn't watch motorbike racing or doesn't know much about bikes, I think they'll feel like this is pretty quick. So I'm going to throw it up quick. That doesn't look slow to me. That looks pretty quick.
But the problem is videos actually make it look a lot slower than it is in real time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
That is, in real time. Like, that looks slow. I'm pretty slow compared to a lot of the lads. But I enjoy it.
My dad always had bikes when I was growing up, and when I told my mother I was getting a bike, she was like, "Oh, here we go." And my dad has subsequently bought one again. He hasn't had one for years, and we're off to the super bikes the weekend. But like, my logic is you have to enjoy life, and yeah, it's risky. Obviously, there's an element of risk attached, but I've been dreaming about it since I was a kid. I'd rather go and get a bike and take that risk than just be sat at home or driving my Vauxhall Insignia around the place, not having any fun.
You can hurt yourself doing anything in life.
Exactly.
So you may as well do what you enjoy.
There is one thing before we get to the racing that I want to talk to you about as well, because I see you're sat in a lovely gaming chair, and I know that you're an avid gamer. And I was speaking to Eddie Greatrix about this on the pod as well a couple of weeks back. We had that lovely period in COVID where I actually quite enjoyed it because everything was kind of shut down. We were still riding out, but then a bunch of us just jumped on Call of Duty, and we got massively addicted and loved it. Unfortunately, we probably don't play as much as we should anymore because life's kind of getting in the way now. But you spend a lot of time gaming as well. I know your family are all big gamers. And as far as I remember, you've got like a games room effectively in your house where you, the wife, and kids will all play games simultaneously.
Yeah, that's actually his chair. She'll play with me. We only really play Call of Duty. I don't play as much as I used to. I was dreadful back in the day. I played when it all first came along, probably before, when you were in nappies. Um, I first came out of my claim, so I had time for myself. I played a whole weekend without going to bed. Like Chris Catlin and Drowney and Fergus Sweeney, we always to play, and they'd come back the next morning and they say, "You still on?" I was like, yeah, still on. And the next day, I'd still be on, like all night. It was absolutely stupid, but I wasn't having to ride. So I have an addictive personality with some things. So some of the games I've really put some hours in.
Yeah. I think you must surely feel quite lucky that your wife and kids play as well, because like a lot of problems for the modern man is they want to get on the game and girlfriend is like, oh, you're not going on that again. But obviously if you guys can all play it together and they've got an interest, that must make it a little bit easier.
Actually, I only started playing a couple of years ago. Before that, it was causing some tension, which I understand. But once she started playing, I think she understands it as well.
How did you convince her to start playing? Because I could do with making some notes here.
I think because the kids started playing on Fortnite, she'd play Fortnite with them. So then she transitioned to try and play Call of Duty a little bit. It annoys her that, it's hard and she dies a lot. But, we play together and it's nice. Yeah. I think it's quite good, actually. We've made a few friends. And, it's good.
Yeah, I think that's a decent family pastime. Like in about 5-10 years when I have kids and they're grown up, I'd love to be able to have that little setup you've got the games from the kids, and I need to convince the missus to start playing, but I'm not sure I'm gonna have much luck with that.
The problem is to just throw her into Call of Duty is near impossible. You've got to try and find her like she did with Fortnite. It's a similar game, it's the same concept, but it's more friendly, or user friendly. And I mean, the kids probably don't play, they don't play that much. We're the ones to play.
Well, let's get to the racing then. The first thing I want to ask you about, obviously you've had some very high level success this year and very recently, but I'd like to come to your successes a little bit further on. I want to start with what you might call sort of horsemanship. Because I mentioned on an earlier podcast as well that I approached you at Haydock, because Haydock being one of your sort of favorite tracks, or a track that you seem to have figured out maybe more than other people had done. And I approached you when I was like 7 5-pound climber riding a favourite and said, oh, how do you ride Haydock? What's the secret? And you said, figure it out for yourself. And I never did. I rode a couple of winners at Haydock, but I never felt like I got the secret. And there's obviously a couple of tracks where one might argue you're maybe better than other jockeys, or you figured out those secrets. So can you tell us, with the likes of Haydock and Chester and those, how do you figure out something about a track? Is it just from riding there, getting experience? Do you walk the track? Do you watch hundreds of replays? What is it that gives you that little edge in some places?
So Haydock, firstly, I was able to do what other people couldn't do because I rode all of Tom's at the time. We ran an awful lot at Haydock. And so I knew those horses and I knew what they were doing. And when I was riding for Tom, I knew they were so fit. If I asked them to go, they'd go and they'd keep going. So that was a massive advantage to me. If you ride for people and horses you don't know, it's very difficult to go and ask them things you're not sure if they're capable of, if that makes sense. Haydock's a long straight. Now, there's not really any tricks, but I feel on the round course that often if I went quick early, say the mile and a quarter, if I go really hard for a furlong, then I'd be left alone. People would think I'd going too quick, and then I could take a breather around the bend and actually then go too slow. But people would think I've gone too fast, but in actual fact, I've been able to then go really slow around the bend, kick early, and there's a little dip at Haydock, about 3.5, and my horses get running. And I know Tom's were fit enough to keep going if I asked them to go at that point. Whereas if I was riding a horse I didn't know, I'd probably be trying to hold on to it till the 2, and then it's too late. Whereas Haydock, you can get them running, and it's only really, like, you see it all the time. Either the front horse has gone, or they'll all come really late and just get it because it's just not quite able to hold on. Haydock's a strange track for that round course. You get a lot of hard luck stories on the rail. But I think it was just I had so much practice around there on horses I knew, and also I know Tom trusted me so much. I could, if it went wrong, it wasn't a problem. So I was able to do things I probably can't do now. So yeah, it's not really that it's Haydock, or I think it was more that relationship I had with Tom.
And how can you tell us exactly how important that relationship is? So that sort of freedom to be able to do what you want, and to having the confidence to know, even if I get this wrong, I'm not going to get sacked effectively. Does that make a massive difference sort of day to day when you're riding those horses?
Yes, jockeys ride on confidence, which I find quite interesting when I listen to some people and how they have a relationship with their trainers, that the trainers put them down, because jockeys thrive on confidence. You can't second guess yourself. If you've questioned yourself, the decision's already too late. So I find it always better to try and be as confident as possible when you're riding.
Yeah, and I think there's been cases that I've observed the last couple of years where, say, there's certain jockeys in certain jobs, and you can just kind of, without knowing the full backstory and what's actually going on behind the scenes, you just get a sense that they're under pressure and they feel like every ride could be their last ride, and therefore you when you watch them, you can almost tell they're riding under pressure. And like I said, I think when you see that, you see cracks start to show, and then you're thinking eventually this is going to peter out. This relationship isn't going to last because they don't have that confidence. And then you look at other jobs with other jockeys, and you know they're just confident, and then you know that they're not feeling like I'm going to lose my job, and they ride with that extra probably 10%. That, particularly on the big days, seems to make a massive difference.
Yeah, and some people thrive under that pressure, and I guess it depends on the jockey, but I'm someone who I like, if I'm confident, I ride better, or if I'm like, because we all go through purple patches and we all go through quiet patches. That's just racing. It's how it is. But I think when you know your boss or your owners are behind you, it's easier to get that confidence back. I think from my perspective, I have quite a strong, I got quite a strong subconscious when I ride. So if someone says, don't let this happen, it'll almost always happen because it's then been put in your brain.
Yeah.
So I'm almost, like, a lot of the trainers I ride best for would almost just tell me about the horse, what they would like to see happen, and then leave it to you. And that's, I don't, even I ride a lot of winners now for the Kublers, and Daniel would shoot me a voice note about the horse in the morning and say, over to you. So when I was an apprentice, more so, someone would say, you're drawn a little bit wide, don't go wide, or don't not have cover. And that would always happen because then it's stuck in your brain. It's weird, but if someone just said, don't worry about it, do your best, try and get some cover if you can, but don't worry about it. So I don't know, the more I've ridden, the more I can deal with those scenarios, I suppose.
You don't have to name names, but are there certain trainers that you have ridden for, or even still currently ride for, that you feel like when you're booked to ride for them, you're going to get like, oh, don't do this, don't do that, and you feel sort of, as soon as you see the jockey book and you feel under a bit of pressure, like, oh, I've got to ride for them, I've got to not mess up, and I've got to not do this, and you automatically ride, I don't want to say a little bit worse, but you automatically ride a bit more cautiously and therefore maybe not as effectively for certain trainers?
Over the years, possibly. Certainly toward the end of my apprenticeship with Roger Charlton, I wasn't riding well for him. I think the trust had gone. Probably was riding a few not very well, particularly, I'd say halfway through my claim. But then I was riding a lot for Tom at that stage. So maybe I'd got through that. But there was a point when I was riding for Mr. Charlton that I was riding badly. He could sense that. I think the trust had gone. And then when that happens, the trainer would want to control everything that is going to go on in the race. And that can't happen. So they think of all the scenarios and what they want you to do. But then all the scenarios can change as soon as the stall's open. So I was a little, I was riding probably pretty poorly at that time. And, I was only apprentice, so I was still learning. And I wasn't the best apprentice there was. So, as I say, yeah, that's probably something I always remember.
Can you try to explain to, say, the average person who's not sat on a horse or not sat on a racehorse, when you talk about rhythm, what does that feel like for you?
So obviously all horses are different, whether I'm running one over 6 or a mile and a half, their stride is going to be different. But if you can get them to be flicking their ears, they're comfortable in themselves. If I'm not having to interfere with them too much to get them to come back, it's just, I don't know, like they get in their own rhythm. If sometimes they can be rushing things, sometimes they can be too lazy as well. Sometimes you've got to ask them to go a little bit quicker, because if they are one paced, if they are too relaxed and they're going too slow, anything with a gear will come and get them. So there's that aspect as well. So it's, I don't know, I guess it's something I can't really explain. I've got to, what have I ridden? 13,000 races more? I don't know. But it just takes a lot of practice, I suppose. But it's like driving a car. Once you've driven a car for thousands of miles, whether you'll get to that slip road in front of the lorry or not. It's just something that you start to dial in. You sort of know, I've gone a bit quick here. They've taken me on too early here. You sort of know 2-3 out whether you might be able to win or not. So it's just takes a bit of time to gauge, I suppose.
I do find when we talk about sort of horsemanship and these kind of subjects, when you speak to not just jockeys, but even, like lads in the yard who are really good at breaking horses in or can just get horses relaxed, that when you ask them to explain what they're doing, I do find like there's a clear distinction between the ones who are actually really good at doing something, can never explain how they're doing it. It's generally on feel. And then you kind of get I always find the mid-tier guys who feel like they can explain it, but in actual fact, they're probably not actually quite as good as those guys who can't explain it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some things I can explain, like the stalls work, I can explain, but I'm better at showing people what I do in the stalls. Couple of jockeys have asked me and watched what I do. David Egan, for example, when he started. Spencer, even back in the day, asked about the stalls, which I actually loved. That someone like Spencer was asking me what I do in the stalls. Probably naturally, I'm not a teacher. Whether I feel I should be someone to tell people what they're doing. I don't know, but if people ask me, I'm more than happy to try and help. But I'm probably not a natural teacher. I just get on and go and do it, I suppose, which most sports people I think do. It's just something. It's something you just do. You don't know how to explain it.
You've piqued my interest now. What are you doing in the stalls?
Again, it helped that I was riding Toms all the time. They got to know me, and I got to know them. But Tom used to never have neck straps as well, so that will help you. Which I actually find better for me. So
Really?
I'd always have a very loopy right rein, hold me mane down low with the loop as long as possible, like longer than anyone would think I should, because obviously the horse has to stretch. And if I'm holding the mane and it's just an inch and I'd have to touch their mouth, then they're going to feel it. So I'd have the right rein as loopy as possible with my stick in that hand normally, depending on the track. Then I'd keep my left hand free to straighten his head. And I'd try and leave the horse alone as much as possible. If it wants to lean on me, if we're in early, it only has to stand up for a fraction of a second. So I'd leave it alone as much as possible. Try not to pull it around unless it's hurting my feet. And then once last one's coming in, I'd shift my body weight a bit, keep me weight in my feet. I'd just shift my body weight in a bit just to wake it up, let it know, keep it. Then I'd use this hand to either push its head straight or pull its head straight. And then once we go, push that hand right up to the top and hold its mane at the top. Now, I'd always watch the flag man as well. Like people, I've had some abuse on Twitter for people saying I'm not, I'm talking to someone next to me, but I'm not. I'm looking at the flag man.
Yeah.
To see when he's going to drop his flag. So obviously Chester is where it's important, things like that. But also each time you ride that horse, it understands. So if I rode, say, Catchy, all of his races, for 13 races, we get a consistency. He knows what I want from him, and I know what he's going to do for the most part. The trouble is sometimes those horses can start getting too fast. So they start, once they hear, all in, blinds, sometimes they'll start rushing the front, which again, then I've got that. So it's quite cool. I enjoy the stalls.
Yeah, and kind of everything you said is more or less the opposite of what I did, which makes sense why I was so slow out. But there was one time, again when I was Claimer, we were both riding at Chester, and we were over 7 furlongs drawn. I think you were drawn 10, I was drawn 11. And I was on a horse called Gabriel the Tiger, who I used to love. I think I won 3 in the bouncing and just used to love him. He was a tiny little thing. He was a rocket. And he used to stand in the stalls and he'd hop from foot to foot. And then as soon as the gates opened, he'd tear off. And I won 3 in him basically from him running away with me to the 3, get a breather in for the furlong, and then he'd kick again. And he was probably a little bit well handicapped as well. But I remember being in the stalls with you. You were on one of Dascom's drawn 10. And I think you said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to go." And you went, no, I'll go. And I said, "I guarantee I'll be that first bend before you. And if you're there before me, you're going too quick." And obviously the Tiger just flew out the gates, got out to the front. It was one of the most satisfying things in my career was getting out of Chester in front of you and getting to that bend first. And I held on to that for years. I want to talk about Qirat in the Sussex because I found it really interesting how the whole situation played out, and what happened sort of subsequently. So from my perspective, I was there on the day and I actually went to watch it in the stands because I like to try and do that as much as I can now because obviously I didn't have that experience when I was riding. And obviously you were in there as a pacemaker. There's an O'Brien pacemaker in there as well. And you've got Field of Gold, who's going to drop in behind you, Rosalian, good horses in behind. And you've got a good jump, typically, gone to make the run in. O'Brien horses missed it and then chased up. And I wanted to ask you, when you've got to the front and you feel like you're in a rhythm and you're effectively doing your job as a pacemaker, and then the O'Brien horse comes and takes you on, what's your thought process at that point? Because I think what I would have expected to happen then was when the O'Brien horse goes that you go, I'm going with you and I'm going to keep forcing this with you. But it seemed like you were you were happy with your own rhythm and fractions to go, no, I can let you go and still do my thing.
Well, in my mind, I was there to do a job as pacemaker. And I felt when the other horse came around, that's why I had a look to see where the others were. And they were nowhere near us. So I thought, well, there's no point me carrying on with the lead horse and being detached from the field because they've nothing to aim at if I'm too far away. So that's why I don't know. I just thought, well, I'll follow you. I don't need to go that fast. And my horse was happy, so I just took the lead. There's nothing more to it than that. It's not complicated. I don't think. I just didn't want to get into a battle with the lead. Another horse going. We'd have. If I stayed with him, we'd have eyeballed each other and gone too fast, the both of us. So when I looked around and seen that no one was on my tail, then I thought there's no point going with him. If I looked around and they were bang there, and I thought I'm probably going a bit slow for them, then I'd have gone with him and gone a bit quicker. But that's why I was looking around to see if I was actually being helpful or not.
The next question is then, and I don't want to be overly critical of other jockeys because I can fully understand, I think, why the other jockeys maybe didn't follow you as closely as some people suggest they should have done. But at that point, when you've had a look around and they're a bit off you, were they further behind than you'd expected? And did you feel like at any point I've maybe gone a bit too fast here, or did you think straight away these should be following me?
I don't think of it like that. I think basically when they've got £20 plus and my horse is seen as a lead horse, there's no reason for them to think that they won't pick us up like they picked up the O'Brien horse. I think it was just one of those things, and I've been guilty of it. You sort of think that's the one I have to beat. That's the one I got to keep tabs on. William said he wanted to follow Rosalian. Sean would have been happy to be next to Ryan and relaxed. His horse usually drops out further. So it was just one of those scenarios that didn't work out for them on the day.
When you hit that line and you're on supposedly the pacemaker and you've won the Sussex, what's the immediate thought process when you hit that line and you actually won?
It was really strange. It was like, I don't know, did I, have we won? Was there a horse the other side of the track that I don't know about? Or, it's really strange. It was quiet. I think Sean was a little bit upset. He was close to me, obviously. So yeah, it was a strange feeling.
I want to talk to you a little about the move to Hong Kong because it seems to me, it feels a little bit strange that you're a Derby winning jockey, and we haven't even had time to really speak about the Derby, and we could have done. But Derby winning jockey, you won the Commonwealth and the Sussex this year, albeit maybe on big enough priced horses. And statistically, it seems to me that you're on a similar enough trajectory, sort of winners wise, strike rate wise, as you have been for previous years, and by all means seem like you're having a successful season. So that move to Hong Kong to me feels a little bit, I don't know if the right word is premature. Does it feel like to you that you've, on the back of two Group 1 winners, Royal Ascot winner, Sussex winner, does it feel like, have I made the right decision? Are you still convinced that this is the right move for you?
Weirdly, even 6 months ago, Hong Kong wasn't on the cards. Didn't have a Group 1 in sight, really. I hope Time for Sandals was a nice filly. I thought she was the best horse I'd probably be riding this year. But, I don't have a job. I was hunting around the all-weather in the winter, annoyed. Not annoyed, because I like my job, but it's a hard winter.
Mhm.
And when you don't have a good horse to look forward to, it's a difficult job. I think it's definitely the right decision. Hong Kong was already sorted before the two Group 1 winners, sorted before Royal Ascot. I'm delighted they let me come over. I had a good stint, which came out of the blue at the start of the year. And it's, it's not given that things will go well, but we can only try these things. I can always come back and get my head down and do what I'm doing here. I've not burnt any bridges. The people I ride for have all agreed that, it's a great opportunity. So it's a no-brainer for me, I felt, when it came along. I think it's certainly better to be going on the back of a good year than struggling to ride a winner and they wonder who they brought over. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
it's good that I can show that I'm able to ride winners. Certainly better to be going there on the back of some nice winners than not.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm really glad you had a good season with some good Group 1s, and I've got fingers crossed for you going to Hong Kong. Obviously, I think we're going to miss you, and I'm going to miss seeing Richard Kingscote around Haydock and Chester and nicking Group 1s from the front. But I wish you all the best, and thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you.